Today, I want to talk about not only the next few decades ahead, but really how an extraordinary rate of innovation and breakthroughs is leading towards a world of unprecedented abundance. So let's dive in. I believe that we are living into a world, the next few decades, where we're going to be able to meet the needs of every man, woman, and child on this planet. Now, when I speak about this, most of us don't believe that, or most of us have doubts, and I want you to realize that we are thinking about the future in a local and linear fashion. What I mean by that is, as we evolved as humans in the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, the world back then was local and linear. Everything that affected you was within a day's walk. If something happened on the other side of the planet, you knew nothing about it. Life was linear because nothing changed century to century, decade to decade. The world of your great-grandparents, you, your kids, their kids was the same. But today, we're living in a world that's very different, right? Today, the world is global and exponential. Something happens to the other side of the planet, you know about it seconds later. Your computers know about it microseconds later. The world isn't changing century to century or decade to decade. It's changing year to year. So if I were to plot this, it looks like this. This red line is us. It's our citizens, it's our government, it's everyone around the world. It's us humans. We are linear thinkers. None of us have had a software or hardware upgrade perhaps since birth. The other line, the yellow line, is the technology in our world that we're creating, that we're using. It's artificial intelligence, robotics, synthetic biology, digital printing, computers, networks, sensors. They're exploding right now. And the difference between that linear thinking and that exponential growth is either disruptive stress or disruptive opportunity, depending on your point of view. If you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company that's worried about your quarterly returns, and some kid in a garage comes up with this invention that puts you out of business, it's disruptive stress. If you're the kid in the garage, it's disruptive opportunity. So what does exponential growth feel like? Remember, I said we are linear thinkers in this world. Our minds are wired to think in a linear fashion. So if I said to you, take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you end up 30 meters away. And all of us can say, I'll be there in 5 steps, 10 steps, 20 steps, and so forth. But if I said to you, take 30 exponential steps, 30 doublings, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, where will you be in 30 doublings? Very few of us, unless you've memorized, would say, I'm going to be 1 billion meters away. Put differently, I will have gone around the Earth 26 times. So the difference between our linear thinking mind saying it'll be 30 meters over there versus exponential growth, I've gone around the planet 26 times, is the point. That's why Kodak could never catch up once they missed the boat. So I want to give you some examples of what this looks like and feels like. This computer I have here is 1982. It's called the Osborne. If you were an accountant, you might have had one of these. It was about the size of a suitcase, and it was, $2,500 US, 28 pounds. 25 years later, that computer is an iPhone, except this iPhone is 1/100th the weight, 150 times faster, 100,000 times more memory, and we have 150,000-fold improvement in 25 years. Physically, this is what we're seeing in 25 years of doublings. 25 years after the iPhone, the computer will effectively be everywhere. It'll be ubiquitous, it will be in the cloud, it will be free, it will be always on. That's where we're almost at today. So what does this mean? This is a statistic from the Babson School of Business that says in 10 years' time, 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies, S&P 500 companies, will no longer exist. They'll be acquired, they'll go bankrupt, they'll be dismissed, displaced by companies we haven't even heard about yet. Today, the rate of going from I have an idea to I run a billion-dollar company is happening faster and faster and faster. So I study this. I study this at a university that I founded in Silicon Valley with Ray Kurzweil called Singularity University. The university is underwritten and backed by Google and Cisco and Autodesk and Genentech. And we study exponential technologies. We study those technologies that are doubling every year in price performance. And we run a number of programs, and I'm very proud that we have a number of Emirati alumni of our programs. We run programs at the graduate level. We run a graduate studies program. And in this program, we bring students in for 10 weeks. And during the 10 weeks' time, we ask them to study all these exponential technologies and then to start a company that can impact 1 billion people positively within 10 years. That's what a person can do today. That's what an entrepreneur can do. You can start a company that can impact 1 billion people positively within a decade. We call this 10 to the 9th plus companies. So I believe we're rapidly moving towards a world where all of these things that we use, that we need to be alive, if you would, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are very rapidly trending towards zero cost. And it's going to change capitalism in a very fundamental fashion. So there's models for what this looks like, and one of the best models, believe it or not, is the early Star Trek world. Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, viewed that world as being sort of post-capitalism, where money had very little use, very little value, until the Ferengi appeared in Next Generation and screwed that all up. But at the end of the day, in a world in which technologies like the replicator exists, your ability to actually create something and have something where scarcity no longer exists, where everything becomes abundant, changes the whole economic sphere of our world. One of the technologies that is sort of in the horizon that's taking us in that direction, of course, is the whole notion of nanotechnology, nanobots. And this is sort of the Eric Drexlerian view of the future. And I know companies, Ray Kurzweil and I advise a company that's working in this specific area. And it's extraordinary to see where it can go in the not too distant future, like in the next 20 years, 30 years at the outmost, where if I have a nanobot and I ask it to replicate itself 500 times, and I give you each one of those nanobots, you then have the ability to create anything you literally want that is a function of only 3 things: the energy, the raw material cost, and the cost of the information. And so we're living in a world where you can have a Ferrari, a mansion, or literally anything for near zero cost. So what makes this all possible is this curve. This curve is the rate of growth of computer speeds. On the bottom here, we have 110 years. On the left axis, it's a log scale. It's how much computer power can $1,000 buy you. And if you look on this curve, what you see is that the rate at which computers were getting faster and faster, and this is a log scale, so it's exponential growth, is pretty constant. You don't see World War I or World War II or recessions or depressions. The rate at which computers are getting faster is independent of what's going on in the world. We're using faster computers to build faster computers. And if that goes on, here is what you see. So the microprocessor driving this presentation is a circa 2010 Intel processor. It calculates at 100 billion calculations per second, 10 to the 11 cycles per second. It's just a number. It also happens to be more computing power than the US government had in the 80s, right? 9 years from now, in 2023, the average computer you can go and buy for $1,000 will be calculating at 10 to the 16th cycles per second, which again is just a number, but if you speak to someone who studies the brain, they will tell you that's the rate at which your brain and my brain thinks. It's the rate at which your brain does visual and auditory pattern recognition. So what happens when $1,000 9 years from now can buy you the capacity of the human mind to think? But it doesn't stop there, because another 25 years later, now the average $1,000 is buying you the rate of the entire human race. Now your kid's homework gets really easy. AI can understand and translate for Google Translate, for example, between 80 different language pairs. It can write, it can read. So what does that mean? It means that 50% of our service jobs everywhere in the world will be up for grabs to AI. How are we going to handle this? Big question. AI will be empowering the individual, where an individual can have access to knowledge that typically only a CEO might have. AI will become our best physicians. I'll show you some technology around that soon enough. But also, AI will become our best teachers. So everyone on the planet, independent of how wealthy they are, where they live, will have access to the best technology for teaching that exists on the planet. Let's turn to robotics. I don't know if you recognize what this is. This is a Tesla factory. My friend Elon Musk, one of my board members, makes this electric car, the Tesla. This is their factory. Look for the humans. There's one right there. Rate of change is increasing. Technological convergence is going to lead to unexpected results. It's not enough to just say computers are getting faster. It's the fact that computers and AI and robotics and 3D printing and all these technologies are coming together and converging to change the world. This is the work that we do in Singularity University, and it's the realization that today an entrepreneur with access to this power, to these kinds of technologies, literally has more capabilities than governments, the largest corporations, had just a couple of decades ago.
And one thing about becoming more of a virtual persona is that there are an infinite number of frontiers. In fact, I can work eventually with my AI, my artificial intelligence, and create a world that is of the dream I want to live in, and go and live in that world. And I can be the king, of my own world, and invite people to come in and be part of that. And I can invite you to come and play in my world. And we're going to have an infinite number of realities we can start to explore. Clearly, other benefits include our ability to become a spacefaring species, where the physical limitations of accelerating things to the speed of light, or of really needing to, remain alive for longer than the normal human lifespan, will change, and we become liberated for our ability to go and populate this galaxy and this universe and what may be an infinite number of universes. And ultimately, it's the ability to become far more, the term is dangerous to say, but godlike, where we have life everlasting, where we have meaning that we don't have to die a physical death, that we are who we are, our mission, our purpose, our consciousness can continue for a longer period of time.